My friends, does the name G. Gordon Liddy mean anything to you? It should. He was pretty famous. G. Gordon Liddy was one of the Watergate conspirators, and then he went on to have a career as an author, radio talk show host. It's a very famous story from back in the 70s. G. Gordon Liddy was at a party, a cocktail party among the Washington elites, and he did a trick for people. He lit a candle and then held his hand over the flame and kept it there until the skin of his palm was actually singed. After he did it, someone said to him, "Okay, what's the trick?" And G. Gordon Liddy said, "The trick is not minding." G. Gordon Liddy knew that sometimes you have to take the pain and do what you need to do anyway. Which brings us to this item from Breitbart. Chinese Muslims in Xinjiang province are facing tight restrictions and other tribulations at the hands of communist officials intent on erasing their religious and ethnic identity by destroying their worshiping sites. Turkey is the only prominent Muslim nation to speak against the Chinese Communist Party crackdown on the mainly Uyghur Muslims that make up the majority of residents of Xinjiang, the largest province in the country. On Monday, Radio Free Asia reported, as Muslims worldwide began a month of abstaining from food and drink from dawn until sunset for Ramadan, Uyghurs chafed under tough Chinese controls over observations of the annual Muslim Holy Month in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Communist authorities in Xinjiang have typically forced restaurants to stay open and restricted access to mosques during Ramadan to discourage traditional observation of the holy month. And in recent years, authorities have tried to ban fasting among Uyghurs, drawing widespread criticism from rights groups. The RFA report came on the same day that an investigation by The Guardian shed light on China's, quote, evil endeavor to raise the mosques of Xinjiang. Remember that word evil, because I'll be coming back to it. Citing satellite imagery of the locations of dozens of mosques and shrines, The Guardian reported on Monday, quote, out of 91 sites analyzed, 31 mosques and 2 major shrines, including the Imam Asim complex and another site, suffered significant structural damage between 2016 and 2018. Of those, 15 mosques and both shrines appear to have been completely or almost completely razed. The rest of the damaged mosques had gatehouses, domes, and minarets removed. A further 9 locations identified by former Xinjiang residents as mosques, but where buildings did not have obvious indicators of being a mosque, such as minarets or domes, also appear to have been destroyed, unquote. Guys, you like movies? Remember Apocalypse Now from back in the 70s? Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, Martin Sheen, you get it, Francis Ford Coppola. It was his follow-up to The Godfather, basically. Marlon Brando plays Colonel Kurtz, and Martin Sheen plunges deep into the forests of Cambodia to locate him and assassinate him. Kurtz talks to the character Martin Sheen is playing, and he talks about what he found when he came to Vietnam. He found people who were willing to defend their country by doing anything. He gives an example. American soldiers came in, they found a bunch of children, and they inoculated them against diseases. Brando took his people and left, but when they came back to the village, they found that the men of the village had cut off all of the inoculated arms of the children. Kurtz goes on to expound upon the strength, the inner strength, the discipline that it took to commit what we in the West recognize as a heinous act, but the inner strength to do that, to do what needed to be done. G. Gordon Liddy's strength to hold his hand over a fire until his skin was scorched simply because he wanted to do it. I'm talking about a kind of strength that, frankly, America doesn't have very much of anymore. America has gotten weak and flabby, morally, ethically. We just barely have a survival instinct anymore. But we can look for an example and maybe for inspiration to the Chinese. The Chinese have absolutely no intention of giving their country or their culture away to Islam. Now, Muslims are very, very open, very honest about their intention to conquer the entire world in the name of Allah, including China. China is one of a small handful of countries, Japan is another one, that simply refuse to submit to Islam. And so they are putting a leash on Islam and a muzzle. And so they're destroying mosques, and the Uyghur Muslims are being put into re-education camps. And America is doing nothing. Please save me the ACLU bit about the rights of Muslims. I understand that. Living things have a right to live. Like an Ebola virus, would you say that has a right to live? Or cancer cells. Islam is a creeping cancer in the world. Wherever it goes, it wreaks destruction, murder, barbarism, bloodlust, hatred. And China says no. China won't have it. And so now, as we read in the headlines every day of President Trump negotiating with China, China's playing the hardest of hardball there is because they have this strength. They're not going to be bullied or pushed around. And I respect them for that, and so does President Trump. We need to recapture that strength here in America. Trump has it, and he's showing it to us, and he's leading us. And so many in America either can't or won't follow that example. Whether it's negotiations, or whether it's controlling Muslims and controlling the spread, the metastasization of Islam. It takes grit. It takes intestinal fortitude, it takes courage, it takes strength. Strength to do what's necessary. And I'm hoping as Riell Truth approaches its 11th anniversary, I'm hoping I've been able to communicate a little bit of this need for strength to my listening audience. Because folks, if we don't have it, we've had it. It's Wednesday. It's Riell Truth. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Riell Truth. By the way, if you have gone out, as you should, and bought a copy of Riell Truth Stay Angry, and you want to mail it to the radio station, they will forward it to me, and I will autograph it for you. Riell Truth Stay Angry, available online. Spectacular read. I recommend each and everybody listening to my voice right now get a copy. Maybe get more. Give them out for presents. Educate the people around you. Otherwise, I don't want to think about it otherwise. 2020, Democrats, keep on talking. Is anyone listening? Is anyone taking them seriously? Here's Glenn Beck. That's actually a very good question, Glenn. Thanks for bringing it up. Why do Democrats lie? And they do. They lie all the time, and not just recently. Democrats have lied for decades. Why? People lie when they need to, and they feel they need to. Why do the Democrats feel the need to lie? Because they know full well that their policies not only don't work, but are destructive. Whether it's doing away with borders, whether it's doing away with ICE, whether it's giving away free college, free medical care, sanctuary cities, the incredibly stupid Green New Deal, taking away people's guns, amnesty for illegals, anti-free speech, Supreme Court packing, LGBTQ rights, abolishing the Electoral College, activist judges, legislating from the bench, all kinds of imagined privileges, white privilege, male privilege, cognitive privilege. They know that if they were to simply tell you honestly what they believe, you would dismiss them, you'd roll your eyes, and you'd walk away from them. And so they lie. And so they lie. In the end, they have nothing to sell but lies. And they know that. And they lie anyway. And that's Democrats.
It's about them having more power over you. It's about getting rid of the free market, one sector at a time. Taxing the rich. It's nice, but whenever you say, hey, how much is the fair share? And people actually hear how much people are paying in taxes, they're outraged by it. How much is your fair share? Let me ask you this. When it comes to reparations, how many people in your life, this is on Politico's top Democratic candidates, where they stand on the biggest issues in 2020, is reparations really the biggest issue that we're facing right now? Where is just being decent to each other? Reparations? Reparations is about changing everything. It's about punishing people. Is anybody else sick and tired of punishing people or being punished? Banishing people or being banished? I am. I don't want to be other people's judges. I'm tired of it. Free college. That's like healthcare. First of all, can't be done.
Folks, you know what Tammany Hall was? Tammany Hall back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, that was the corrupt swamp, if you will, in New York City. It was the political machine. And what they would do is they would go through these impoverished neighborhoods in New York City. People didn't have very much in those days. Most people didn't. And they would give away free turkeys. This comes from the name of the guy who was the head of Tammany Hall was a guy named Boss Tweed. His last name was Tweed. This is from Boss Tweed. Remember the vote for him in November. Now, if you had a family to feed and you had no money and no food, and Boss Tweed gave you a turkey with promises of more turkeys to come, do you know who you're going to vote for? Very good, that's right. You're going to vote for Boss Tweed. And the Tammany Hall machine went on for a lot of years, buying votes with free stuff. Does that sound at all familiar? What you have today in the Democrat Party is basically Tammany Hall. They're going to buy your vote. We're going to give you free cell phones. We're going to give you free college, free medical care, free everything. Just vote for us. It's dishonest. It's buying votes. It's illegal. You can't buy votes. And it's the very basis of any chance the Democrats have of taking power.
Save everybody. No, it won't. It will drive the cost of college through the roof. But you don't notice it because you'll be paying taxes for it. This is about the government controlling all education. This is about the government controlling your children and your children's chance just to have a shot. Your children's
My friends, it all goes into the mix if you're a liberal. It's all part of a worldview. All these things are fine if you're a liberal, if you're a Democrat. In reality, they're horrors to be avoided at all costs. Item from the End of the American Dream blog. This is the closest that the U.S. has been to a war with Iran in decades. And yet most Americans are either clueless or they don't seem to believe that it could actually happen. And I certainly don't think that President Trump wants a war, but he's surrounded by war hawks that have been pushing an extremely aggressive get tough policy with Iran. Stop. Folks, the End of the American Dream comes from Michael Snyder, who's been a guest on the show. Very smart man, good man. I have to disagree with him here. He's afraid of inching closer to war with Iran. I'm in favor of demolishing Iran with the push of a button. We can't coexist with an Iran headed towards nuclearization. We can't. The world can't. Because Iran will use its nuclear weapons. It has said so publicly, openly, many times. Let's continue with this. The Trump administration just canceled the waivers that were allowing other nations to continue purchasing Iranian oil, and the goal of that move is to reduce Iranian exports to zero. But oil exports are 40% of the Iranian economy, and the Iranians understand this move can absolutely cripple their economy. The Iranians have threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz in retaliation, and that would almost certainly provoke a U.S. military response. In addition, it's being reported on Wednesday the Iranians will announce they're taking steps to restart their nuclear program. My friends, with the push of a button, we could wave bye-bye to Iran and its nuclear ambitions and its goal of leading a nuclear jihad. Iran, which is the #1 sponsor of terrorism on planet Earth. Now, no one wants war, but no one wants a nuclear terrorist either. And in this day and age, war doesn't have to be boots on the ground. War can be, as I just said, the press of a button. Well, I recommend we press that button. And if we could do it before I go off the air today, even better. Iran with nuclear weapons is a nightmare for the planet. It cannot be allowed to happen. Fortunately, we finally got a president with the strength to take that step. And as he listens to the show every day, at least I assume he does, I urge him to take that step. We can't have a nuclear Iran. We just can't. And now they're threatening to restart their program. I don't believe for a minute it ever stopped. All right, let's take a break and we'll come back. Hopefully by the time we do come back, Tehran will be in flames.
Today is completely dependent on technology. Food, water, and transportation. Computers are operating our power grid and even the cars we drive. In minimal massive power curves or electromagnetic pulses in the atmosphere, this could render the country completely useless. The president has just signed the first executive order to identify problems with critical infrastructure in the USA and prepare the United States to demand a PNT event. The power and water may come back on. Your home and all your computer management may ruin PMPshield.com has the solution. They offer the world's first PMP protection device. Made in America, they can protect your home, office, RVs, generators, and the list goes on and on. And listeners, the American Freedom Net, call letter KANC into the order code box and receive additional listener discount. In Vegas, the list to KANC, go to then drafted a bill that a budget
All right, guys, welcome back to Riell Truth. Newt Gingrich was on Fox News a couple of days ago. You know, the anti-Semitic fake news New York Times, that disgraced newspaper that most people who buy it now use it strictly for lining their bird cages. The fake news anti-Semitic New York Times pulled off a major coup by getting Donald Trump's tax returns, which I think is illegal. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me Americans have a right to privacy, right? Anyway, they got what they purport to be summaries of his tax returns. They're calling it his returns, but what I heard is that they are summaries of his tax returns. Anyway, here's Newt Gingrich on Fox News addressing it. But folks, before we start, let's get something very clear at the outset. No one is saying Donald Trump broke any laws. He didn't. All he did was take advantage of the tax laws as they existed 30 years ago. Who wrote the tax laws? Who drafts legislation in this country? Well, it's Congress. So if Congress wants to tear its own clothes and pull out its hair because they passed bad tax laws, well, they can. They're free to. All Donald Trump did was take advantage of the rules that were on the books, and he did a very good job of it. Would you rather have someone leading this country who did a lousy job of it? He did a great job of taking advantage of the laws as they existed. Everything he did was perfectly legal. The only thing you can accuse him of is being really smart. Here's Newt Gingrich. Well, the New York Times is hoping, as liberals in general hope, as the major media outlets hope, that somehow they're going to damage Donald Trump. All people are doing is laughing at their pathetic attempts. The New York Times revelations show that Donald Trump is whip smart. They show that their business, the New York Times business, isn't really news. It's furthering a Democrat Party agenda. It shows that they've weaponized their newspaper to try and get a sitting president. They've shown that they are losers and fools at the anti-Semitic fake news New York Times. Go ahead, Newt. And by the way, as long as we're going to start releasing tax returns, why not have every member of Congress release his or her returns? I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. What do you say, folks? Should we start a national movement to get Congress to release its tax returns? That's a worthwhile cause.
I think you touched on
Yeah, the New York Times is hypocritical. New York Times is biased. It's garbage. It's nothing. Fewer people than ever are reading it because it's an extinct dodo bird. And those are its good points. All right, let's take a commercial break and I'll be right back. All right, guys, we are back. We're still talking about Democrats. God help us, we seem to be talking about them every single day. We are plagued with them, and they are a plague on this country. Here is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, talking to, let's see, Jesse Waters on Fox News about just how low Democrats can sink. Spoiler alert, it's pretty low. Now, my friends, listen to me. Listen closely. A nuclear explosion comes from an atom, basically. From that little answer that William Barr just gave. No. Why not? Why should you have them? Incredible strength. The integrity in those words. William Barr has followed the law, as indeed he has through his entire career. You know, he used to be Attorney General years ago. He is again. He has followed the law punctiliously, to the letter. And all of the preening, bloviating Democrats in Congress, they can't touch him. They are fools, and he is a real man with honor and integrity, doing his job and representing well the American people, and they can't touch him. Well, yes, it's sad to see the Democrat politicians sink to this level. It's sadder to see people across the United States Democrat voters who don't care. They don't care. The Democrats in the Beltway, the congressional Democrats, are animals and liars and working against America. And people who vote Democrat just plain don't care. They care more about getting Trump than they do about the fact that they're sinking this country. They're impoverishing this country. They're weakening and debilitating the United States of America, and they don't care. They will keep on voting for the same loony Democrats they always have because their skulls are just too thick to be penetrated by common sense. Folks, when they say the economy is doing well, it means you are doing well. It means you and your family are doing well. It means your community is doing well. Communities all across the United States are doing better than we have in years and years and years because of Trump. And the Democrats still want to get him. And they want to get you, too. They want to bring him down, and in doing so, they want to bring you down. They want to bring the economy down. They want to bring America down because, frankly, they hate it. We'll be right back.
Do you remember the energy crisis? People can we can put it in the top years later, a lot has changed. A lot of our competition has used the past. We're still family operated. You're still safe. Saving the best way to play. Found it mainly. Free for the free, big time. You're 8 from Grandpa looking all fun. Colorado, 1994. We spent 5 days down there. We also buy sell on and trade gold, silver, musical instruments, archery equipment, quads, side by side, points and colossal. We buy collections and field races, with the sports racing purposes, shipping by us. We are for a KTM Colorado, dealer, because we over the big box stores. We can deep big box stores, but don't forget. And we have the most expensive rates for the half of what the corporate stores charge if you do them. How much did your grandpa
All right, guys, let's finish up. This is from a story by Reuters about the shooting, the school shooting here in Colorado. The story picks up like this. Denver's ABC television affiliate, citing an unidentified police source, reported on Tuesday that one of the suspects wanted to transition from male to female and had been bullied for it. Spurlock, he's one of the cops, declined to answer a reporter's question about whether the younger suspect was transgender. Quote, "Right now we're identifying the individual as a female because that's where we're at," he said. "We originally thought the juvenile was male by appearance." Spurlock said the suspect had been identified as male, quote, "before the detectives were able to get the medical and detectives were able to speak to her," unquote. Now, my friends, don't go saying that transgender people are unbalanced, unstable, volatile, confused, because I don't want to hear it. I mean, it's true, but I don't want to hear it. But when police detectives need to turn themselves inside out and bend backwards and over to try and get right the gender of some confused kid who's so mentally healthy he went on a shooting rampage, I don't want police detectives doing that. I like clear, straight truth. Item from Michael Snyder at the End of the American Dream blog. The healthcare system in the United States is deeply broken, and it's causing massive financial pain for millions of American families. Previously, I've published articles where I talked about how medical bills are the primary factor in 2/3 of all personal bankruptcies in the United States, and that Americans had to borrow a whopping $88 million last year to cover medical costs. This is happening even though more than 90% of all Americans have some form of health coverage. Thanks to soaring deductibles and health insurance policies that are absolutely riddled with loopholes, more Americans than ever are being wiped out by medical bills. And now a brand new study that's conducted by researchers from the American Cancer Society has discovered that 137.1 million Americans suffered medical financial hardship in the past year. Unquote. My friends, the problem is every bit as desperate as Michael Snyder says, and Congress doesn't want to do anything. Donald Trump is trying to push them to revise our medical system so that it works for Americans, and Congress just doesn't feel like it. It's a national disgrace. Item from the Des Moines Register. Workers represented by unions should pay bargaining fees regardless of whether they decide to be union members or not, according to Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke says, I don't care if you're a union member, you should pay union dues. Now that is what passes for intelligence among Democrats. Item from Fox News, Dateline, Springfield, Pennsylvania. A Pennsylvania school principal will no longer say God bless America after leading students in the Pledge of Allegiance. My friends, I guess God bless America just isn't cool anymore. And imagine the message that sends to kids in school. I've said this on the show before. When I was a kid in school, we did the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning. I was the only one in my class who would stand up and remain silent during the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Other kids made me feel like I was a fool. But now here I am 100 years later, and I realize, no, they were being foolish. They had been taught to be foolish and cynical and distrusting of America. While even then, at a tender age, I knew America was the best idea the world has ever had. And that's what we should be teaching kids in school. And cutting out the Pledge of Allegiance is exactly what I would expect from a brainless, liberal education system that really despises this country. All right, enough. I will see you tomorrow with more, my friends. Until then, be well.